can determine whether the worst of the earthquake has passed. This is on Nature magazine. It's given to us by Southern California Earthquake Center, USGS. Determining whether the worst of the earthquake has passed. When a big earthquake occurs, it's hard to tell if it will be followed by a larger quake or by only smaller ones. A method has been developed that aims to distinguish between these scenarios while events are still unfolding. This is on Nature by Emily E. Brodsky. After every major earthquake, seismologists warn the public that the danger has not yet passed. Aftershocks will continue to shake the ground, and these aftershocks usually get smaller over time, but occasionally an aftershock will be larger than the original event. Standard earthquake statistics suggest that the latter situation should occur about 5 to 10% of the time. But is there any way of knowing which aftershock sequence will behave in this anomalous way? Or more simply put, after a big earthquake, it is possible to determine whether an even larger one is coming. Writing in Nature magazine, Julia and Weimer propose an answer to the question. They suggest that by continuously measuring the relative numbers of large and small earthquakes, comparatively safe aftershock sequences can be distinguished from those that will get bigger. The magnitude distribution of earthquakes generally follows a relationship known as the Gutenberg-Richter law. So roughly speaking, in most places on Earth, for every earthquake of magnitude 4 or larger, there will be 10 earthquakes of magnitude 3 or larger, and 100 quakes of magnitude 2 or larger. The exact ratio of big to small earthquakes in a particular time or place is described by a parameter called the B value. If this value is low, there will be comparatively fewer small quakes for every big one. And if it's high, there will be more small quakes for every big one. In previous work, Julia and Weimer, together with co-workers, found that the B value normally rises during an aftershock sequence, which means that small earthquakes become more common. In the present work, the authors noticed that occasionally the B value drops instead of rising, implying that big quakes increase in frequency. And they also noticed that these sequences are the only ones that contain an aftershock larger than the original quake. According to the definition of the B value, sequences that have low quakes are more likely to be associated with big earthquakes than are those that have high values. Therefore, Julia and Weimer's findings might seem to be merely a restatement of aftershock statistics. However, the author suggests that the observed pattern is deterministic rather than statistical on the basis of the fact that a falling B value is seen robustly for only 2 earthquake sequences in the entire data set. In the 2016 Kumamoto earthquakes in Japan and the 2016 Amatrice Norcia earthquakes in Italy, each of the sequences contain an anomalously large and damaging aftershock. For nearly all of the other sequences, the B value increased directly after the original quake. The authors note one exception to this, which they attributed to poor data quality in the early 1980s. The picture of the Norcia, Italy, the church damaged there October 30th, 2016. In the image, the town of Norcia was hit by an aftershock of a large earthquake that had occurred 2 months previously. Unlike most aftershocks, this one was bigger than the original quake. Julia and Weimer suggest that it might be possible to predict whether a large earthquake will be followed by a bigger aftershock or by only smaller ones. So making such a claim based on 2 aftershock sequences might seem bold, but in earthquake science we're often driven to closely analyze the few examples that are available because nature provides only uncontrolled experiments at irregular intervals. And nonetheless we need to proceed with extreme caution in the face of such sparse data. In particular, measuring the magnitude distribution is not as simple as it first seems. Many judgment calls are required to determine how big the measurement region should be, how to define the normal B value for a region, and how to account for the fact that many aftershocks are not recorded in the wake of a large earthquake. These decisions must be made for each region, and the decision-making is the Achilles heel of statistical seismology studies such as this one. You see what they said here? This is very important. They said many judgment calls are required to determine how big the measurement should be, how to define the normal B value for a region, how to account for the fact that many aftershocks are not recorded in the wake of a large earthquake. See, they don't record most aftershocks. That's why it's important to record every aftershock, because that's how you can understand what's coming later on. So going on with this, for instance, the authors opt to use data collected at least 3 days after the first large amateurist North Sea earthquake to compute the B value, but use data collected at least 0.5 days after the first Kumamoto event, because of the higher quality of the Japanese earthquake catalog. If they had waited 0.2 days after the first Kumamoto quake, their traffic light coding system would have given a yellow warning rather than a red one, that is, a less definitive warning. Expert judgment is intrinsic to the design of scientific analysis, and in this case, a different judgment would have led to a different answer. So how can we determine whether the correct decisions have been made? The gold standard of any scientific theory is its ability to predict data that have not been collected when the theory is proposed. Julia and Weimer have documented their decisions through a full release of their computer code. As new earthquakes occur, the key test of the paper will be in the reuse of this code. Earth is already providing us with the opportunity to test the author's claim. The 2019 Ridgecrest earthquakes in California are notable for having a magnitude 6.4 event followed within days, that is the next day, by a magnitude 7.1 event. Other examples will surely follow. We can all hope for a more predictable future in which these anomalous events cease to be surprises. This is on Nature magazine, number 574, 158-186, 2019. References Jones, L. M. Bull, seismologist, and Fieser, K. R. Abercrombie, seismologist. And this is their Nature reference 574, from directed here from Southern California Earthquake Center, USGS. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.